Cecilia, thanks so much for joining me today on what is a beautiful Sunday morning. Um, you're a permaculture educator, designer, declutterer extraordinaire, and I'm sure no introduction is needed, but I see you all the time over social media with your blog and YouTube channel, as well as
Really?
the classes that
Wow.
you do on
Mm.
sensible permaculture design, both inside and outside, as well as your workshops on decluttering and communication. Just so many things that help people out when things get a little too complicated or when they don't know where to start. So I think we've all definitely been there. I'm really struck by the fact that you've traveled so extensively. You've taken inspiration from your travels into your work, and I'm really keen to dig in there and learn about your philosophy, why you've really focused on this idea of life design, which I think is so fascinating. So I'm really keen to hear so much about that today. So thanks for joining me today. I thought I'd start about this idea of life design. So where did this sort of come from? How did you get into this sort of specific area of permaculture, and how does it link to this broader philosophy?
Let me think. Well, it probably came from when I was 3, and I thought, adults, they just don't know what they're saying. I can't wait to grow up and have my own life.
Yeah.
And then when I grew up, I discovered permaculture when I was 22. And I also discovered Japanese culture.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a personality thing. I love to be free to explore. I'm very curious. I was a bookworm, so I just read and read and read. And all my books when I was a child, like 10, I believe are permaculture books. All my favorites were about how, as a kid, to get free from the world of adults or the world that you're given. Like Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, that clever little field mice who went and made friends with the very clever, scary rats to help save a little boy, and used natural forces, used the help of other animals, made a network to save her son and move the house. It's a permaculture book. So many books as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
When I grew up and read Bill, I thought, yeah, that's what I want to be doing. So it's just always been who I am, finding ways to use what's at hand to make what you need. So as a 5-year-old, I was making my own doll clothes, and I thought a dress is this shape, so I'll just cut this shape and fold it around. And I had a big pointy tail, and I thought, so there's more to design than you can't just imagine what you want and do it. There's a few little tricks. So I loved learning design as I got older and older. And like as a teenager, I didn't have money for cool clothes. And I felt very embarrassed at school because everyone else did. So I learned to sew. And when I was 12, I had lots of brothers and sisters. I grew a garden.
Oh, wow.
It's just so fun to be generative.
Yeah, and that seems to have been such a sort of a deep and integral part of who you are. It's not something that seems to have been learned. That's so fascinating. And so how did you actually get into this sort of line of work? How did you decide that this was what you wanted to do?
It just happened. I remember being 21, writing out my next 10 year, all the options. Like I could be really miserable mother with heaps of children and no husband, or I could go and work in Antarctica, or I could go and be a beekeeper, or I could write a novel and be really famous. So it was the full spectrum, and I really believe they were all plausible.
Right.
That life could go in any direction. And then I thought, well, I'll just do what I love and see where life takes me. And I'm still wondering what I'm going to be when I grow up. I'm still reading the book of my life with great interest to see what's in the next chapter. Who's going to turn up and change my trajectory. One thing is certain, permaculture is endlessly interesting. And I don't think anything else is worth doing. But with permaculture, it's ever changing. You can always escape. There's always you can team up with other people. You can do different things. And my focus has really changed. Like for 8 years, I was crazy about balcony gardening.
Mm.
And I'd go around the world, and whenever there was a cool balcony, I couldn't see it from way up, and I'd knock on the door and go and take photos.
Yeah.
And I became known for it. And the front page of Google was mostly Cecilia's edible balcony gardening page, if that's what you Googled.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm.
and so local council would call me up,
Mm.
and then other people got good at it and took it over. And I thought, oh, good, that's handled. I
Yeah.
can do something else.
Right. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. Because and I was actually going to ask as well. You know, you've traveled so extensively, and how have your travels sort of influenced the way that you view permaculture? Has that been sort of this idea in a constant state of flux? You know, influenced by everything you're seeing and experiencing. How have your travels come into all of this, and particularly as well in Japan?
Yeah, so I've traveled to Japan almost every year for the
Oh,
past 29 years.
wow.
Yeah, well, 3 years I didn't go. So obviously I'm in love with Japan, and I keep going back. And also Japan, it wants me. It's so much easier to get paid to do permaculture design in Japan than here,
Okay.
because here people think they know what it is and that it's gardening,
Yeah.
and there they've no idea. They say permaculture, about hair design. No, it's not about that. It's about making your life better and solving your problems.
Yeah.
And I'd run a workshop in Japan, and then someone in the audience would say, this has changed my life, this is the only thing worth doing, and they'll put on a workshop, and then someone there will put on a workshop,
Yeah.
and then the whole town would be waiting for Cecilia to come back. And
Yeah.
someone from the workshop would say, come and stay at my house. And then we'd implement, and I'd stay, and weeks would go, and miracles would happen.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing for a few decades.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
Japanese are so good at implementing. I love their culture, not all of their culture, but the cultivated part of their culture that you see in the tea ceremony and Aikido. And
Yeah. Cool.
so there's so much, I get so much every time I go that I just keep
Yeah.
going. Yeah.
Wow, yeah. And so can you describe in maybe a few words or a sentence, what is your permaculture philosophy? What do you take from permaculture that you then that what kind of philosophy do you take to give to people when you do your
Hmm.
workshops and when you teach people?
So, so the goal of permaculture is to look after people, starting with yourself. And we're not very well looked after. We're
Mm.
given, society gives us, if you let it, crappy food, crappy work, isolation,
Mm.
a family with like just one other adult
Mm.
and children and TV. Horrible, horrible. So permaculture is a way of getting your own needs met, and you get it, they're met by, how lovely, meeting the needs of others. So making a community around yourself.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm in the home of Dr. Mark Cohen, and he's having a building bonding bathing day.
Oh,
You
wow.
can't see it, but up there, he's got this like wonderland with sauna and bath, and he's making a tree house. His old fire wreck trees, he's turning into like a ropeway, and you can walk in them, and he's doing it with the power of community. So there's all these people asleep at the other end of the house.
Right.
So he's made a community to make his dream come true, and he's got a teepee and a yurt so volunteers can come and stay, because the process is more important than the outcome.
Yeah.
It's about living a life of love, like all the minutes, and my dreams are coming true, and we're connected, and we're eating good food, and life can be like that. So I have share houses, and I love that. So I've never married and I've never had children, but that's okay, because I've got WOOF volunteers, and they, you know, their mums are sick of them now that they're 26, so I kind of mother them a bit, and that works.
Yeah.
So I'm starting my latest Zen permaculture fairyland, and these are a bit like this house, very creative, but very pretty, because I like pretty. So very clear, companion planting of human beings.
Right.
So it's, of course, great to be good at companion planting in the garden, but humans are the same. And around some humans, all my talents evaporate, and I just be quiet and hope the moment will pass. And with other humans, I flower and I'm useful and I've got stuff to give. So for me, permaculture is finding people's best selves and putting them in a position so that their best self can flourish.
Wow, I love that. I love that so much.
It's so lovable.
Focus on people care is so important, and I think putting that front and center is really, it makes a lot of sense, and it's really so important. Yeah.
And when you're doing people care, it's a natural side effect of people care that you're doing planet care, because you're giving people organic food, you're giving them meaningful work, and they're not shopping and doing all the destructive things. So that just happens. And if you're doing those two, you're automatically doing share what's spare. You're making available your spare talents, your spare room.
No, everything I can see comes from that. That's so interesting. So I really want to turn to the idea of permaculture design that you've been doing so much, with your YouTube videos around the house, and your blogs, your blog posts as well on that. I found it so fascinating that you've translated these permaculture design principles and ideas into really simple sort of tricks and advice for zone zero. In your recent post, you used principles of zones and it was reducing useless diversity and the edge effect in designing people's fridges and decluttering people's fridges of all things. And I think this idea really nicely links to my pet peeves, and I think a lot of other people's pet peeves in permaculture, which is that there's this conception that permaculture is all about, gardening, and it's organic gardening, and that's all it is. But yet the simplicity of these permaculture solutions is quite telling, isn't it? The fact that they're used in all aspects of our lives and all aspects of our environments.
Yeah, poor Bill Mollison, because he was a biologist and he was very blokey. For him, his life revolved around gardens. And in his books, he'd say, permaculture can be applied to anything, banking, housing, architecture. And he'd say that, but then all his examples would just be gardening, because that was his thing. That was his lookout.
And so how have you been thinking about that? How have you sort of made those links and sort of thought about it in that way? Because in a sense, it's such an obvious thing to think about, but in a sense, it's also not the most obvious thing as well, if that kind of makes sense.
Bill Mollison told me to, and David Holmgren told me to. They said permaculture works in any area of life to solve human pain and problems. And I said, okay, I'll pick my current problem. My house is messy and I don't know where to get started, and my lovely housemates don't want to live with me anymore. I got a problem. And permaculture would solve it, because what's amazing about permaculture is how to get things done without force. I don't force myself. I don't force others. I just find that bit in me that naturally wants to do this, like a rabbit naturally wants to dig and a bird wants to fly. And that's the best thing for both of them to do. So bunny me isn't expected to fly, and bird me isn't expected to dig. Oh, what a relief. And I can still get things done. I can still get a house that cool people want to live in.
Oh, awesome. No, again, makes so much sense, and it really seems such a natural thing and such a simple way to sort of think about your life. So what's on the horizon for you for 2021? Is it looking like a fantastic year? I'm sure it is.
I guess in permaculture you learn that there's no good and there's no bad. There just is the way things are. There is effectiveness and ineffectiveness. You want to have care of people, earth, and share what's spare, and you want to be effective at it. That's desirable. Have these principles and be ineffective. Horrible, horrible, horrible.
That's true.
So if you're talking about permaculture and all you're doing is talking, it's hell. Or if you're going around talking about global warming and what we should be doing, and you're doing things that don't count, like recycling.
Mm, mm,
You're just recycling, and like recycling is this trick by the plastic industry to make you think that it's okay to buy their crap.
mm.
No. Find a way to be going shopping with all your little containers and
Yeah.
pop it in, and go,
Mm,
go back every month and find a way to plan your kitchen so that you don't have to buy this stuff.
yeah. Mm,
So I'd like to be effective. Some years I'm more effective than others,
yeah.
but this year I've got this new adventure, which is one of my declutter clients has entrusted me
Mm.
with her and his house in suburban Rosanna in Melbourne.
Wow.
And I've been given the brief of turning it into my next Zen permaculture fairyland. So I'm getting the garden really usable.
Yeah.
So the garden was full of, I call it in the privacy of my heart, eco crap. So there's all these tanks and
Uh,
raised gardens, but no place for people. And we're the center of the system. And if we're not feeling rich and happy and we're in dapples and we're having picnics and connecting, then
yeah.
the whole house is not living its function or its
Yeah.
dream. So I'm getting it really usable and making little lolling lawns where we can do our work, and little places where people can take phone calls
Mm,
in outside, so we're not
yeah.
annoying each other, and you can fit more people in. And
Yeah.
then after about 2 years it will be paradise, and someone else will ask me, Cecilia, I've got this house, and I'll do it all over again.
Wow. Oh
Yeah,
gosh, that's so exciting. Yeah.
because any good thing starts with a good culture.
Mm,
People who like each other and are grateful for each other.
yeah.
Um, and I'm envisaging my ideal future is Melbourne is this like colorful patchwork of different houses. So you've got the musician house, and you've got and they love being together and making music, and you've got the
Yeah.
extrovert house, and they love parties, and they wade through empty bottles and they don't care, and then there's the sociable introvert house, and
Mm,
that's my house, and they love Japanese culture, and they're always thinking, oh, how can I be more mindful? And
yeah.
when they see like a harmonious shoescape all lined up, they think, oh, things are just in flow here.
Yeah.
And that we can all
Mm,
feel at home in our homes and be
yeah.
our best selves. And this doesn't mean comfortable.
Mm,
Horrible word, comfortable. Like, comfortable is not desirable,
mm,
but they feel alive and
mm,
happy
mm.
and in their element.
Right. What a
Yeah.
lovely way to end. That's yeah, no, that's that again, it just seems so logical and so many common sense solutions here. And you know, putting people care front and center is really so important. And I think the
Mm.
fact that you've made that the central part of your permaculture philosophy is really inspiring, and I think we can
Thank
learn a lot
you.
from that. um
The listeners to just envision all the houses in
yeah.
a, within earshot, and all the rooms that are unloved, empty, full of abandoned projects,
Mm,
like dusty, no one goes there. And just imagine them slowly filling every square meter with love and flowers and people and projects and
mm,
quiet,
yeah.
and that you're making that happen,
Yeah.
because it's a desert.
Mm,
Suburbia is a desert of mostly unused space,
yeah. Yeah.
and we can change that.
Yeah, no, it's a great place to start, and it's a great way to think. So Cecilia, thanks so much for joining me today. It's been so inspiring. I feel very happy. I felt very comfortable, and sorry, comfortable is the wrong word, but
Alive, we're feeling alive.
but I think the way that you speak about your life and about permaculture and your philosophy is really so interesting and so inspiring for all of us. So thank you for sharing all of this today, and I think yeah, I'll learn to speak less and to act more, and to do those little things. So thanks so much.